Amid the silent night of Windsor, a sharp, jarring sound tore through the normally serene calm of the British monarchy. The grand door of Royal Lodge, once a symbol of opulence and power, had been forced open. Red and blue police lights flashed across the moss-covered walls, illuminating the historic facade. In an instant, what had been a royal home was transformed into a crime scene. Within minutes, specialized vans and emergency maintenance crews arrived. Police immediately cordoned off the area. Reporters jostled outside the gates, cameras swinging frantically, shouting into the heavy rain. An insider revealed that the operation was carried out under direct orders from the highest level. Yet no one knew the real reason why. Buckingham Palace remained silent. No statement, no explanation. But on social media, the news spread like wildfire. The public was bewildered. Speculation erupted, and a single question dominated the conversation. What did they find inside? It was a small earthquake shaking a monarchy, long thought unshakable. To understand why a royal residence had been broken into in the dead of night, a historic first in the United Kingdom, we must rewind time to the man once called Prince Andrew, Duke of York, the man once beloved by the nation. Before his name became synonymous with scandal and royal shame, there was a time when the name Andrew, Duke of York, inspired pride in the British people. The third son of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, Andrew grew up in the glow of royalty, doted upon by the most powerful mother in the world. In the public eye, he was the dashing prince, warm smile, confident demeanor. In the 1980s, British newspapers dubbed him Europe's most charming prince, a man capable of capturing hearts with just a glance. When the Falklands War broke out in 1982, Andrew, barely in his 20s, volunteered without hesitation. Serving as a Royal Navy helicopter pilot, he undertook dangerous missions in the war zone. Images of Andrew in uniform, eyes resolute, made the nation proud. He returned to cheers from thousands, celebrated as a hero of the United Kingdom. The press hailed him as the embodiment of duty, loyalty to his country, and the Queen's pride. Yet, the light of fame often marks the beginning of shadow. After the applause and accolades, Andrew entered royal life with excessive confidence, carrying the sense of being special. He became the center of lavish parties, elite gatherings, and meetings with aristocrats and business magnates around the world. From London to New York, he was seen with models, actors, and notorious figures of high society, while his elder brother, Prince Charles, was considered measured and responsible. Andrew became the party prince of his era. He relished nights of strong drink and music, surrounded by beautiful women. The press began calling him Randy Andy, a nickname referencing his carefree and indulgent lifestyle. Photos of him laughing with models and appearing at exclusive nightclubs gradually tarnished his once pristine image. Yet the monarchy shielded him. The Queen still believed her son, despite his reckless streak, remained loyal and harmless. Until Andrew married Sarah Ferguson in 1986, the public hoped for a new chapter. Their wedding was televised worldwide, watched by millions. But within a few years, the marriage collapsed amid scandal, including notorious affairs and embarrassing photos of Sarah. The image of the perfect prince crumbled piece by piece. After the divorce, Andrew seemed adrift, abandoning clear purpose. He retreated from royal duties, living in luxury at Royal Lodge, the sprawling Windsor residence. In the 2000s, he began associating with infamous businessmen and billionaires, including Jeffrey Epstein, later at the center of America's largest high society sex scandal. Epstein was notorious for his influence among financiers and politicians, hosting lavish parties where power and desire intertwined. Andrew met Epstein in the late 1990s, and they quickly became close. They traveled together, attended events, and were repeatedly spotted together in New York, Palm Beach, and even Epstein's private residences. At the time, the relationship was dismissed as nothing more than a social connection between two powerful men. But everything changed when Epstein was arrested in 2008 for sex trafficking of minors. The public began to question why a member of the British royal family would maintain such close ties with a convicted criminal. By 2010, while Andrew was still in contact with Epstein, British media erupted in outrage. Photos of them walking together in Central Park became evidence that eroded public trust. Buckingham Palace was forced to issue a statement claiming that Prince Andrew has severed all ties with Jeffrey Epstein. Yet the truth proved far more complicated. Then the name Virginia Giuffre surfaced, the young woman who alleged that, at just 17, she had been abused by Epstein and forced to serve Prince Andrew one night in London. A photograph of Andrew with his arm around her waist, alongside Epstein's right-hand woman Ghislaine Maxwell, became the symbol of the scandal. Andrew denied the claims, insisting the photo is fake and that he didn't remember her. But the explanation fell far short of convincing anyone. The storm truly erupted in 2019 when Andrew agreed to a televised interview on BBC's Newsnight to clear his name. The broadcast was widely regarded as the largest public relations disaster in royal history. He spoke about the allegations in a cold, emotionless tone, even smiling when mentioning Epstein. The public was outraged. The media seethed, and the next day The Guardian headlined, "Andrew, the prince who buried himself." In 2022, Virginia Giuffre formally filed a lawsuit against Prince Andrew in a U.S. court, facing immense public pressure and mounting evidence. Andrew agreed to an out-of-court settlement, reportedly paying over $12 million. The confidential settlement did nothing to restore his reputation. Instead, it stood as a silent acknowledgement of wrongdoing. For the first time in decades, Buckingham Palace was forced to take decisive action. In January 2022, Prince Andrew was stripped of all military titles and royal duties. He could no longer represent the monarchy at any public event. Once hailed as a war hero, Andrew had become a pariah. British media described the morning the announcement was made. The Queen remained in silence for an extended period at Buckingham Palace. The mother who had once loved him above all others had to revoke her son's privileges to protect the monarchy's reputation. Behind the scenes, Prince Charles was the most resolute. He understood that without decisive action, the future throne would be overshadowed by scandal. Since then, Andrew has lived in seclusion at Royal Lodge. There is no laughter, no party lights. Those who knew him say he rarely leaves the residence. Royal Lodge, once a symbol of power and elegance, had become little more than a prison for a man stripped of everything: fame, status, and trust. Outside the gates, the press occasionally captures images of Andrew riding alone across the grounds. His face is somber, eyes sunken. He apparently still believes himself innocent, a victim of political and media machinations. But to the public, that no longer matters. Once trust is lost, no justification can restore it. When the glory faded, the man once hailed as the Queen's pride was left only with silence and shadow. Andrew chose to lock himself inside Royal Lodge, a former symbol of power now turned fortress of denial. And perhaps, amidst the cold walls, he still wonders, at what moment in his life did the once proud prince lose himself? Set against the lush greenery of Windsor, Royal Lodge was once a jewel of the British monarchy, every door and hallway echoing the footsteps of those who shaped history. This 30-room mansion once belonged to the Queen Mother, beloved across England as a symbol of compassion and sacrifice. But now, under the heavy silence of Windsor Park, the house stands as a stark emblem of a dark chapter no royal wants to speak of. When the Royal Lodge doors were forced open that night, witnesses said the sound of splintering metal woke not only the wooden frame but also the protective shell of an entire dynasty. Inside, the musty scent hit immediately, the pungent smell of time, secrets, and decay. Flashlights swept across thick dust covering the ceilings and velvet drapes, where the Queen Mother once displayed rare Windsor family portraits. The solemnity had given way to chaos. In the grand drawing room, heaps of cardboard boxes towered to the ceiling. Many still bore Amazon logos. Unopened, the stacks of parcels formed silent monuments to disorder and waste. Beneath them, old garbage bags, scattered clothing, towels, and shoes littered the floor as though the space had been abandoned for years. A dark red velvet curtain, ripped and hanging, added a chilling sense, as if the room had witnessed something it shouldn't have. Those present on the inspection team recalled that each step on the wooden floor sounded hollow, echoing through the dark hallways. There were no traces of aristocratic luxury left, only remnants, a reminder of honor once held and now tarnished by those within the royal family. In a corner reading room, an oak filing cabinet had been pulled out. Inside, among yellowed papers, were old envelopes bearing the royal seal, financial documents, handwritten notes, and even a few photographs fastened with metal pins. One officer recalled that when the first photo was pulled out, the room froze. It depicted a private party, featuring a familiar royal face alongside the man who had shocked the nation, Jeffrey Epstein. No words were spoken, but every eye understood. This was the reason Buckingham Palace had quietly issued the forced entry order. On the antique desk, a stack of unopened royal gifts still sat in their boxes. Some were from kings, others from foreign dignitaries. Each was coated in dust, never unwrapped. One exquisitely crafted gift bore the inscription, "To your Royal Highness with respect." Now nothing more than a bitter symbol of neglect. Amid the clutter, an ivory envelope was found, sealed, sender unknown, with a scrawled warning, "Never let anyone read this." Inside was a handwritten letter, trembling script smeared as if the writer had hesitated until the very last moment. The contents made the team pause. It spoke of money, a relationship, and an apology addressed to Her Majesty, though it was unclear whether this meant Queen Elizabeth II or someone else. The handwriting suggested it belonged to someone who had once lived there. The final line carried a chilling implication. "I chose silence, for it was the only way to protect the throne." No one knew where this letter had been intended to go, or why it had been forgotten in the locked house. But when news of it spread, England exploded. Major newspapers ran headlines: "Royal Lodge, the House of Royal Secrets," and "The Letter Never Sent, a Windsor Confession." Crowds gathered outside Windsor's main gates, peering through the wrought iron fence, where police lights still flickered in the night. A middle-aged woman told a BBC reporter, "We used to think of Royal Lodge as a symbol of honor and dignity. Now it's just a house of ghosts." A former royal staff member recalled that the Queen Mother would stroll through the gardens each afternoon, admiring the roses and saying, "One day, this place will remind us of the good." Now, however, Royal Lodge stood as a monument to decay and deception emanating from within the palace walls. The public outcry was immediate. Social media flooded with speculation. Some suggested the royals were cleaning up evidence related to Prince Andrew and Epstein. Others believed the forced entry was intended to retrieve a specific item, perhaps the letter, or an even more dangerous document. An insider told the Daily Mail, "This is not merely about property. It's a desperate attempt to hide something that must never see the light of day." Meanwhile, Buckingham Palace remained silent. No statements, no explanations, only a brief notice on the official website. Royal Lodge is currently undergoing security and conservation checks. To the public, however, the statement only fueled suspicion. Royal Lodge was no longer merely a royal residence. It had become a psychological crime scene. Every room, every abandoned item, carried the breath of collapse. In the master bedroom, the large wall mirror reflected a dim light, as if gazing back at faces that once smiled before the public while hiding fear behind a mask of honor. In the dining room, silverware engraved with the royal coat of arms sat on the table, blanketed in thick dust, a banquet that had never ended. For those who once dined, there would never return. A photographer permitted to shoot the exterior said the scene reminded him of a dynasty unraveling. Outside, the rose garden bloomed. The lake remained calm. Inside, everything had rotted. "It was like a heart still beating, but stripped of feeling," he said. And when the first images of Royal Lodge aired on television, England fell silent. Millions watched as if witnessing a portion of the royal soul being laid bare. It was not just a house broken into, but an entire system of symbols collapsing before their eyes. Yet perhaps the chaos inside Royal Lodge was only the tip of the iceberg. Behind the moss-covered stone walls lay not only the dust of time, but irreparable fractures within the Windsor family itself. A family once seen as the bedrock of England, now divided by power, secrets, and suspicion. If Royal Lodge was a mirror reflecting the monarchy's soul, the image now staring back was so distorted that no one could recognize it anymore. Sarah Ferguson once said in an interview over a decade ago, "Andrew is the only family I have," a short sentence. Yet it carried all the trust, loyalty, and loneliness of a woman who had once been the Duchess of York. For many years after their divorce, she kept that promise. No remarriage, no new home, continuing to live at Royal Lodge with the man who had once been her husband, as if the past could be salvaged so long as they stayed together. But then, one day, even Sarah left. The marriage of Andrew and Sarah had once been the center of attention in the 1980s, as Britain basked in the image of a carefree, lively couple, so unlike the solemnity of Charles and Diana. Yet that glow quickly faded. Scandals, notorious photographs, and ultimately the divorce in 1996 turned Sarah into a reviled figure within the palace. Still, contrary to public perception, she and Andrew never truly parted ways. After the divorce, they continued to live together at Royal Lodge for nearly 2 decades, in a relationship both intimate and enigmatic. The media dubbed it the strangest unofficial marriage in Britain. Sarah cooked. Andrew read the morning papers. They attended their daughters' weddings together, posed for Christmas family photos, and were occasionally seen strolling through the Windsor gardens. Beneath that peaceful exterior, however, ran deep cracks. Sarah understood that Andrew was no longer the man of the past, the Falklands hero, but a figure isolated, under suspicion, carrying the shadow of sins no one dared speak of. When the Epstein scandal broke, Sarah was the only one who stayed by his side. She defended Andrew before the press, accompanied him at family events, and even wrote that Andrew is the finest man I have ever known. But that loyalty became a burden. The more she defended him, the deeper she was pulled into a whirlwind of criticism. The beloved image of Sarah faded, replaced by pity tinged with irony. The breaking point came when the doors of Royal Lodge were forced open. Sarah had no choice but to leave. Many said she departed out of fear. Others claimed it was an order from above, a clean sweep of all traces. Perhaps, deep inside, it was resignation. After years of clinging to a family already gone, she finally realized she was only living in memory. Meanwhile, the 2 daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, chose silence. Both had been very close to their father, but since the lawsuit with Virginia Giuffre, they had largely withdrawn from official engagements. They spoke neither in defense nor opposition, a silence both pitiful and heavy. Beatrice, now the mother of a young daughter, lives quietly with her husband, businessman Eduardo Mapelli Mozzi. Eugenie, once considered the last pride of the York family, now appears only at charity events, avoiding all questions about her father. They do not hate him, but they understand that any action could make their own children victims of public scrutiny. Thus, the 2 daughters born under royal spotlights have chosen to disappear quietly to protect innocent children. For Andrew, it was a devastating blow. Stripped of titles, excluded from royal duties, he had almost no friends left. In the rare photographs, he is seen trudging out of church on a Sunday morning, without security or anyone at his side. The silence of his ex-wife and daughters marked the final chapter of his role within the Windsor family. Royal Lodge, once a symbol of power and prestige, had become an empty shell, housing a man living among decaying memories. Close sources said Ushu's pride had become obsessively private. He rarely left the house, spoke only to a few trusted staff, and often engaged in long but meaningless phone calls. He still believes he is the victim, said one former aide. He thinks the royal family betrayed him, and Sarah was the only one who understood that. Yet even Sarah was no longer there. When images of Sarah packing up and leaving Royal Lodge spread, the public understood that the York family had truly fallen apart. No more parties, No more Christmas photos, no one in the same frame. This disintegration did not happen with shouting or grand announcements, but in silence, a silence far more terrifying than an ending. Those who knew Sarah said she left with a calm demeanor. Though her eyes revealed an unspeakable pain, she had believed that devotion could save honor, that loyalty could alter fate. But in the royal world, there was no room for emotion. Once the stain was revealed, all those near it shared the same fate. Beatrice and Eugenie did not publicly say goodbye, but their actions spoke volumes. No one from the York family appeared together again. The name Duke of York was never mentioned in any Buckingham Palace statement, as if they had never existed. And that was the greatest tragedy. Not the fall from prestige, but the erasure from history while still alive. Andrew had once been the Queen's beloved son. Sarah, the rebellious Duchess. Beatrice and Eugenie, modern princesses of a new era. Now all that remained were shadows drifting in the past. In the final days at Royal Lodge, neighbors said the family's laughter was gone. No one wandered the gardens picking flowers. No warm lights glowed from the living room windows. Only crows perched on the old roof, calling out long, hollow cries. And while the York family fell apart, some saw it as the perfect opportunity to erase the past. As that house became the scene of hidden secrets, wiping out every trace of the Yorks was more than just a technical action. It was a message. A small dynasty within the royal family had come to an end, quietly, bitterly, without a single farewell. Since officially donning the crown, King Charles III has not hidden his ambition to modernize the British monarchy. Yet behind the seemingly reformist slogan, "Monarchy Slim Down," streamlining the royal family, lay a far colder and more calculated purge. Buckingham Palace, long a symbol of stability, was now witnessing an unprecedented restructuring, where personal relationships, power, and prestige were being shaken to their foundations. And the figure most often pointed at behind the scenes was Queen Camilla, the woman who had once sparked national outrage over Princess Diana's death, now rumored to be steering the throne itself. After his coronation, Charles spoke of a leaner, more transparent royal family, closer to the public. But as the list of those removed gradually emerged, it became clear that the real goal was not simply cost-cutting. It was a deliberate, calculated purge. First came Prince Andrew, the younger brother embroiled in the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. Stripping him of his royal title was only the opening blow. But reclaiming Royal Lodge, the residence Andrew had occupied for over 20 years, was the decisive strike, both symbolic and deterrent. Outwardly, the public saw only a property dispute between the king and his brother. Insiders, however, understood that Royal Lodge represented a scar Camilla was determined to erase. She was reportedly the one pushing Charles to act, citing the need to clean up the royal image. A palace source revealed that Camilla considered Andrew's continued residence at Royal Lodge a disgrace to the monarchy. She believed that only by removing all faces associated with scandal could the throne be truly pure. The British press dubbed it the Palace Purge. And if one looked closely, those removed shared a common trait. They had once been close to Charles during his Prince of Wales years, but were outside Camilla's control. Sarah Ferguson, Andrew's ex-wife, had been friendly with Charles for many years. Yet after Camilla ascended to queen, Sarah was gradually pushed out of royal events. The palace doors now barely opened for her, despite her once being an integral part of the Windsor family. Many sources suggest that Camilla skillfully used the Slim Down campaign to consolidate personal power. While Charles focused on foreign engagements, Camilla was entrusted with overseeing internal operations. She was the one reorganizing the roles of royal members, deciding who could appear publicly and who would be frozen out. Some observers noted, Charles is king in name, but Camilla controls Buckingham's inner court. The climax of this purge was the forced entry into Royal Lodge. British media described it as an unprecedented act in royal history. During the night, a special security team was ordered to storm Andrew's residence under the guise of a structural safety inspection. But leaked images showed they did much more, searching, seizing, and sealing numerous boxes of documents, hard drives, and personal belongings. Rumors spread immediately that the house contained letters, photographs, or sensitive materials linked to Epstein and possibly other aristocratic figures. A chilling theory emerged. Camilla herself had pushed for this action, ensuring that nothing in Royal Lodge could threaten her husband's throne or her own reputation. Numerous articles in the Daily Mail and the Times suggested that Queen Camilla's obsession with power extended far beyond ceremonial duties. She sought to prove herself the protector of the throne while using her authority to sweep the past clean in her own way. Supporters of Camilla argued she was doing what was necessary. The monarchy needed cleansing to survive. In the age of social media, a single scandal could topple centuries of prestige. Critics, however, saw a different picture. A woman once despised by the public now acting as judge over the fate of an entire family. One royal expert commented, "This purge may bring order, but it is killing the last traces of humanity left in the palace." During internal meetings, Charles maintained a calm demeanor, but close sources said he faced tremendous pressure between loyalty and affection. Andrew, despite his fall, was still his brother. Sarah, despite her faults, was the mother of two granddaughters he adored. But Camilla viewed everything through the lens of a politician. For her, the throne had to be protected at all costs, even if it meant sacrificing those closest to them. As news of the palace purge spread, public opinion in Britain was divided. Some believed Charles was doing the right thing, removing shameful shadows to build a new monarchy. Others saw only cold calculation. This is no longer Queen Elizabeth's royal family, where honor and kindness once reigned. One Guardian reader wrote, "This is Camilla's royal family where power wears the disguise of reform." And when the doors of Royal Lodge were locked for good, many could not help but wonder, was Charles truly giving the orders? Or merely approving a plan already set in motion by the woman beside him? A former palace advisor once said, "The monarchy has always survived through adaptation, but this time that adaptation may cost them their very soul." The palace purge may have cleaned the monarchy's outward appearance, but the price was the fracture of a family. And as Windsor night fell, echoes from Royal Lodge still resounded, a reminder that some doors, once broken, can never be closed again. When the doors of Royal Lodge were sealed, the house, once steeped in the aura of power, suddenly became eerily empty. No footsteps echoed through the halls. No whispered conversations traced the long corridors. Only the smell of fresh paint lingered, the chills seeping through every crack. And the vast space seemed to sigh. The royal possessions once cherished, the ornate furniture, the solemn oil paintings, the carefully curated collection of antique books had all been removed, sent to distant storage or other palaces. Royal Lodge was no longer just an abandoned residence. It had become a hollow monument to lost honor. Andrew, once celebrated as Queen Elizabeth's beloved son and a Falklands hero, was now reduced to a solitary figure quietly leaving the home that had been both his sanctuary and his seat of influence. He moved to a modest house in Sandringham, far from palace lights and public scrutiny. No one accompanied him. No one bid him farewell. Only a few loyal staff helped arrange his new accommodations. Andrew stepped into his private world, ruled by silence, where each footstep across the cold wooden floors reminded him that past glories were now nothing more than memories. The empty house was a graveyard of honor. Walls that had witnessed countless royal decisions, important conversations, and Andrew's tentative or confident steps now held only echoes of the past. It is hard to imagine that a place once brimming with power, prestige, and fame could become a cold structure of concrete and wood, every personal imprint erased. Each room, from the grand sitting rooms to private bedrooms, carried the traces of collapse, leftover debris, abandoned clothing, forgotten belongings, and thousands of fragmented memories no one dared to revisit. When comparing Andrew's fate with fallen princes throughout royal history, one cannot help but shudder. History has witnessed wayward royal offspring. Edward VIII renounced the throne for love. Henry VIII punished the disloyal, and many other princes were pushed aside, living in silence and isolation. Those stories now seem to be replayed in Andrew's life. A man, once in the spotlight, now reduced to a shadow. History teaches that power does not redeem morality, and once honor is lost, even the throne becomes meaningless. Royal Lodge, once a symbol of power, now serves as a warning. Its empty walls remind us that honor cannot be bought with titles, maintained with reputation, or masked by authority. Andrew had been celebrated, publicly smiling, the center of royal ceremonies. Now all that pride has been reduced to scattered memories, lingering in the empty corners. The clearing out of Royal Lodge and Andrew's relocation was a highly symbolic act. It was not merely a transfer of a man and his possessions. It was the erasure of traces, the denial of personal authority, and a message that no one, not even a prince, stands above the consequences of their actions. To the public, it reinforced Charles and Camilla's monarchy slimmed down, a leaner monarchy, cleansing the shadows of the past, safeguarding the image of the throne. But behind those cold walls, Andrew and the York family endured profound isolation and pain. Sandringham, where Andrew now resides, bears no resemblance to Royal Lodge. The small, modest, secluded house is a space of solitude, where every vestige of royal pride is exposed to the harsh light of reality. Each step he takes, there is a reminder that glory and power are gone, leaving only the consequences of past actions and decisions. Andrew is left with only a few loyal staff. He lives between memory and emptiness, between the curious gaze of the public and the shadows of his small home. It is not just Andrew who witnesses this collapse. Sarah Ferguson and his daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, do as well. Sarah has moved on, building her own life, yet her eyes still glimmer with sorrow when recalling a once happy family. Beatrice and Eugenie, tasked with protecting their children and personal dignity, have chosen silence, a way to avoid being dragged into scandal. Together, they paint a tragic picture, a family once loved and respected, now scattered, hollow, and left with consequences that cannot be erased. Images of the sealed Royal Lodge, Andrew at Sandringham, and the removal of royal belongings are profoundly symbolic. A castle of power transformed into a graveyard of honor, where the past is buried and every mistake must be paid for. Royal history is no stranger to stories of powerful figures who fell, but rarely is it displayed so directly and so starkly in modern times. Andrew is not merely a fallen prince. He is living proof that power cannot salvage morality or personal honor. Looking at Royal Lodge, one sees not just an empty house, but the consequences of decisions, misplaced loyalty, mistakes, and concealed scandals. Every wall, corridor, and room stands as a silent witness to the collapse of a family, and the most haunting truth is that no royal wall can ever conceal honor once it has been lost. No one can stand above the consequences of their own actions. Indeed, whether prince, princess, or queen, when past deeds are laid bare, no one can escape. When honor is lost, every royal wall becomes meaningless. Royal Lodge, Sandringham, Buckingham, they are all just empty structures if those within cannot preserve the purity of their honor. Do you think Charles is doing the right thing? Or is he merely continuing Camilla's cold streak of revenge? This question extends beyond the personal. It touches the very nature of power, integrity, and justice in the modern monarchy. Who is right? Who is wrong? And can honor ever be restored? Or is it merely a memory buried beneath empty walls? Royal Lodge is closed. Andrew has moved on. The York family is scattered. Yet the image lingers, a castle of power turned into a graveyard of honor, where the past, present, and future of the monarchy intersect in silence, leaving everyone with a lesson that cannot be forgotten.